Most of the pheasant tail you buy, the fibers will be pretty equal on both sides. Sometimes you'll buy pheasant tail, it comes from a different place of the bird, that'll have nice stiff fibers on one side and really soft fibers on the other. It's pretty cheap, and when we take it off the stem, we want to get our ends even. Okay, so we just kind of pull it off at a 90 degree and get our ends evened up, and then just snatch it off. And then all this connective stuff I can just go ahead and take off. So that's pretty much how I'm going to deal with my pheasant tail. Let me change my thread. I'm going to go with brown thread on this bug. It too is going to have wire on it. So I just want to start our thread right up by the eye. And on this one I'm going to do a full thread base all the way back. And I'm going to stop right at the barb of the hook. So you can see that barb on there. So when I get back, it's right kind of where the bend starts. So right there. Oops. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to put in is my wire. We can use gold wire on this. Kind of looks a little bit better. I'm going to use this silver just because I have it out. I'm going to go ahead and just take my thread back forward. And the reason I'm doing this, I want to get a good thread base on the metal hook. I don't want to tie any material straight to the metal. I want them to have like a little bit of a cushion underneath them. So I've got my wire right up at the eye. And just bring it all the way back. Okay. I'll drop some of my pheasant tail, so I'm just going to take some more. So I just pull it off straight. Okay, and so the tips.
How many fibers are you using?
Oh, I don't know. What's that, about 7, 8? So I'm not going to do any legs with this, so I just kind of want enough that when it's flattened out is going to make a nice thorax cover. So that looks pretty good to me. These are the tips, and that's going to be my tail. So my tail traditionally is the length of the shaft, okay? So from right behind the eye to right at the bend, that's kind of how I want to measure my tail. Now sometimes, you know, that's just like a traditional measurement, but if I want it to be shorter, I can obviously tie it in shorter. I don't really think I would tie it in longer. The trick to putting these tails on is that I can try to hold it straight over the top and do a pinch wrap like John Schultz did last week. I just want to make sure that I get my pheasant right on top. I just did 2 loose wraps, and I can look at that and I can kind of just tell, you know, if I like the length. If I want to shorten it, I can pull and shorten it a little bit, but that looks pretty good to me. So I've done just 2 loose wraps so that I can still adjust it. Once I have it on there, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make sure that my thread goes right back to that barb. That's where my tail starts, and then I want to get it tied in nice and tight. Now on this fly, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and tie this pheasant all the way up. So I'm going to go ahead and just make sure, the key is to keep this pheasant right on top. So it has a tendency to rotate around, but if I make sure and do my wraps nicely with nice tension, I can keep it right there. I'm going to come all the way to the eye, maybe an eye length back from the eye, so I don't crowd my head. All right, so my pheasant's in. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring my thread back again, and now we're going to put our dubbing on. These flies tend to get a little beefy. I think they fish a lot better if they're not, so I want to try to get it a little bit thin. So we're using hare's ear dubbing, and you can actually buy a rabbit face and clip your hair off if you want, and certainly some people do that, but they make them already already put together for you. And then there's Hares Ear Plus that has a little bit of flash in it, and there's different colors. So
They dye them?
they do, yeah. I've got olive Hares Ear, and I got all kinds of colors here. I'm just going to use natural. All right, so this is the Hares Ear dubbing, and then what I want to do, if you can see, there's a lot of long guard hairs in here, and then some of the shorter hairs, and you can see there's actually a little flash in this one. I like to, if you can see that little clump right there, I really don't like that stuff, so I'll pick that out, and then I'll just kind of put it in my fingers, pull it back and forth, kind of get it evened up. Okay, and then we're going to dub this right on the thread. We're not going to do a dubbing loop. So the key to this is to get a tiny bit. Okay, don't try to put a ton of dubbing on it once, just a little bit. And if I want to go back over that and make it thicker, I certainly can, but if I try to put a ton of dubbing on, it's not going to go on smooth. It's not going to wrap smooth, so just little bits. And I'm putting my dubbing on in the same direction. And if I see any little spots that I think are a little thin, I can go ahead and come in here and put a little bit more on there. Okay, and then once I get it all on there, so if you see, I've got, what, about 2.5, 3 inches. That might be a little bit much, but I want to make my first wrap right there where my tail starts, and then I want to do nice touching wraps going forward. Okay, and I want to make sure this is nice and smooth and kind of thin. Okay, and I want to try to make it all the way up to my eye. Perfect. Okay. So now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and take my thread. I'm going to bring it back. So we have an abdomen and we have a thorax. The thorax is about half the size of the abdomen. All right, so you can see where my thread's hanging. It's not halfway in this hook, it's about 2/3 and 1/3, right? So I'm going to bring my pheasant tail straight back. I'm going to go ahead and wrap that down a couple times, nice and tight. Okay, now I'm going to take a little bit more dubbing. And this time I really don't want to have much on here. I'm going to do just enough to cover that pheasant tail up front. And before I do that, I forgot to wrap my wire, so I want to bring my wire up. Now this again, it's not the pheasant tail material like on the next fly, so it doesn't really have to be counter wrapped because all it's really doing is protecting dubbing. It's not really a fragile material, so I want to wrap this up through. I should have done that before I brought my pheasant tail back.
The purpose of that is to hold down the...
It's actually to give it a segmented ribbing look. Yeah, that's really what it's for. And like
counter wrap, it shows up better.
yeah, it might pop a little better. That's for sure. When you're trying to protect something, counter wrapping is really crucial. And like John said, it might pop out a little bit better. All right, so now I've got my wire brought up. Now what I want to do is I'm going to create my thorax. I want my thorax to be a little bulkier than the abdomen. Okay, so I'm going to bring that over. I'm going to bring this over. This is what they call a wing case. I want it to get nice and flat. Bring it over the top. And I'm going to tie it down right behind the eye. A few tight wraps, pull it up, and make sure this will kind of keep your eye nice and exposed Cut this really short. And then we whip finish. Go ahead and put a few wraps on there, because if you mess up your whip finish and you don't, then all of that will pop up now that it's cut, and it's really hard to get it back on. And then with this fly, if you want to, you can also do a little bit of, I don't know why this thing is, you can do a little bit of UV right over the,
back.
yeah.
You wanna make sure you get some of that in the eye.
Yes, always get it. Yeah, I'll be especially to give the flies away.
All right, so I got a little layer on there, and it kind of soaks in because it's kind of porous.
Sure you never lose it. You'll never get the side off.
Is that a special UV light, or is it just?
It's a little pen light. There's all kinds of UV.
But they are, it's a black light.
All right, and so that's that. Now, if you wanted this to be buggier looking, you could come in with your Velcro, and I have one somewhere. Anyway, you can take your Velcro and you can rough it up and make it and bug it out a little bit. Not sure where mine is, so I'll let the guy sitting across from you teach you how to do that. That's a pheasant tail. I mean, hare's ear, sorry.